Hey guys, welcome back to another Rest Eat Move podcast. I got the big dog in the studio doing a dual podcast. We're going to talk about greens today, one of our favorite superfoods. We call these super greens. We're going to talk about all greens: spinach, kale, broccoli, bok choy, collard greens, all greens in the same category. But we obviously like to always come back to these super greens, these superfoods. So buckle up. You're going to learn everything about chlorophyll, everything about greens over the next 30 to 40 minutes. So as we think about greens, the reason for doing this podcast is I think I still see people going down the path, taking a right turn, and then starting to take some action, when if they could go up the mountain, go closer to the source, you start to realize there's a lot of nutrients that get missed when you start to isolate these superfoods or these nutrients, which we've talked about over and over again. And so we're going to talk about energizing, detoxifying, and thriving. That's one of the reasons why we think everyone should add some type of super green to their diet. Let's just start with greens as a category overall. You were talking about calcium and bok choy and collard greens, but talk about what greens are from a food standpoint.
Well, greens is the big one. It's detoxifying. It's energy. It's nature's sunshine in a bottle. So it does so many wonderful things. And I look at my own personal diet as I probably am lacking sometimes in salads and greens. So I think the big one is how do you fill in these gaps, which we like to talk about, and what is it and why you need to do it. But yeah, I think I've seen major transformations with people. Everybody's been talking about gut health for a long time, but when they start bringing some of these super greens into their lifestyle, things start to disappear. Acid reflux, whether it's colitis, some severe stuff. The immune system gets better, and because a big part of this is chlorophyll, and chlorophyll's naturally cleansing. So when we try to build the body, we also have to detoxify it and clean it.
You've been in this space for a long time. You watch Oprah and different people over the years talk about different diets and trends and things. But for forever, you've heard you got to eat your greens. Where'd that come from? Why is it a thing? Why is it such an issue? Why is it a challenge for most people?
Well, it takes effort. You need to be intentional about it. And when you buy certain greens, they don't last a long time. So it's a fresh thing. I got to go shop it regularly. I have to clean them. It takes a little effort. So I think that's why it's a little challenging for more people. And way back in the day, I started looking at what are the most powerful foods in the world. So I was reading an article, and they were talking about grasses, and they were talking about sea vegetables, and I started, I was thinking about this, and then you got algae. The three oldest foods in the world are sea vegetables, grass, and algae. Everything on the planet originates from those. Well, if that's the case, why wouldn't we spend more time on those foods that cover lots of ground? So greens have been, again, beginning of time,
billions of years.
Yeah, kings and queens back in the day had algae, and nobody else had it
Aztecs,
because
yeah.
So it was for the Japanese warriors. It was a survival food, so they could live on some of these things. So that's again why we want to get a little more detailed about this podcast, is helping people understand the power of greens.
So you said, I think one of the more profound things, the three oldest foods on the planet are sea vegetables, grass, and algae. We talk a lot about grass and algae. We do like sea vegetables. It's a little bit, if algae and wheatgrass aren't hard enough, sea vegetables are another even step further, but extremely potent and powerful and cleansing.
Yeah, and again, if we like I love, Jensen's Chemistry of Man. These are things that were written a long time ago, back in the 30s. Then you got Paul Pitchford's book on healing with whole foods. We love that. When I first started looking at Paul Pitchford's book a long time ago, he's had multiple editions after that. But if you looked, and what I love about his book, it's not about his beliefs or his biases.
Just what they do.
It's just what it is. So a carrot is this. a potato is this. It talks about yin and yang, all that kind of stuff. But when we got to the greens, we started talking about sea vegetables and wheatgrass and like Spirulina Chlorella, which is an algae. There wasn't a paragraph devoted to it. There was multiple pages devoted to it. And that hit me like, here's this, 600-page book. He has multiple pages on each one of these, but that's because they're so powerful and
they cross over.
Cross over,
yeah,
correct.
So, for example, spirulina is super high in protein. Chlorella is super detoxifying. Those have a lot of different ranges, right? So let's talk about somebody trying to repair and rejuvenate the protein, and then you got somebody that has toxicity trying to detoxify. If you can do those things with one food at the same time, you got, like you said, sunlight in a bottle. So a couple things as we start. Greens. All greens contain chlorophyll. Just a little bit of a science there. Chlorophyll is the green pigment in a plant that absorbs the sunlight and creates its own food. It's one of the most amazing things, and everyone learns it in school. Applying it to human nutrition and all that stuff is maybe not the connection, but we've heard about photosynthesis. But I always like to think, and I've heard this many times, Dr. Bland talked about this too, is chlorophyll is kind of like plant's blood. So it's very similar to our blood. And so when we consume chlorophyll, it gives us some of those same benefits that we need to make our blood healthier. And then the other thing is greens in a plant are the plant's immune system. And so when we consume greens, it boosts our immune system. These are easy ways to remember it. Yet, again, like I said, many people have heard and are going to be told that we need to continue to eat our greens because we don't eat enough greens. You said one of the reasons is effort. I think it's taste. It's not sure what to do, not sure why I should do it. Get busy. Most food products that are going to be in a box or a package are going to not have greens because they don't last very long. Yeah, they don't taste very good.
You think about like your kids, our grandkids. Like we had dinner yesterday. They're not. I mean, we make a chocolate chip cookie. Teta made a chocolate chip cookies for them. But if you said, "Hey, here's this green salad,"
yeah.
That's not the same energy for that. We get it. So it's it's effort. But you have to kind of like, okay, Popeye, yeah, I got to eat my spinach.
There's certain
right?
greens they won't even try.
Right.
It's just that kids won't even try it
they
for whatever.
Try it.
It must be in the DNA of evolution.
Yeah. Here's a pea. Here's a green bean. Not going to eat it.
Like Ez likes broccoli, Karis likes peas. Like it's
yeah.
But so the takeaway is we need these greens for energizing, detoxifying, thriving. Can you survive without greens? You can survive without greens. Can you thrive without greens? We don't believe you can. And that's why we're having a whole podcast.
Yeah, because how can you have, you want to have this naturally cleansing of the human body. There are lots of ways to cleanse, but chlorophyll or greens is one of the greatest.
And then we'll talk
about
supplementation. So when people start going down the route of I need to take B vitamins or I need to take peptides or I need to do this, when you look at greens, again, the 3 oldest foods on the planet, they contain these same properties that we're trying to isolate in some type of supplement down the road, including gut health with the pre and probiotics. So that's kind of the first step today. But one of the biggest ahas is chlorophyll naturally kills bad bacteria. That's one of its properties. And the foods that have more chlorophyll are going to be more detoxifying in that way. Talk to us about when you started to really educate people about nutrition. It started with probably more of upgrading, eating clean, but then you start to bring these superfoods, these 3 oldest foods on the planet, into someone's diet. What did you start seeing? Was it gut health? Was it skin? Was it digestion?
Well, the first thing I started always looking at is, the 2 basic things is what nutrients are you missing and what are you not absorbing? And so many people, they're not aware of it. We're all not aware of it sometimes, but how is the bowels working? And that's the bowel, the urine, the lungs, the lymph, the skin. That's how the body cleanses itself. And today, we have all these digestive health issues. When you start putting some of these greens intentionally in people's body, they start coming back and going, gosh, I'm having a regular bowel movement for the first time. It looks like it should look. I'm having, everything about I don't have the bloating like I used to have, and I don't have this. I have better energy. I don't have the acid reflux. It starts to happen almost instantly, and that's what they go. That's the feedback you get. Of course, that's what's making the gut healthy again. So that's what I've seen, in the last, many years. But now more and more people are aware, like, okay, I have acid reflux. What can I do? Well, this is where we got to get an apple. You got to do a lemon, but we got to get the greens in your gut.
Yeah, I like in your presentation when you talk about, you can go in the science. We talk about the cell, the pH. So let's talk about two of those principles, and we'll get to the third principle, which we've kind of covered. But let's talk about the cell. You like to say that greens, chlorophyll, these super dense, nutrient dense greens. Let's talk about the wheatgrass and the Spirulina Chlorella specifically. It's kind of like scrubbing bubbles of the inside of that cell. And you hear all these buzzwords right now, mitochondria function and cell health, which you've been talking about for 40 plus years.
Long time. Yeah.
But now it's kind of trending and people are kind of pulling and extracting these things out. Some people don't know what scrubbing bubbles is, but it's a form of cleaner that you used to use in your home. You'd spray it, it'd foam, and it'd clean things out.
Yeah, so when you think of the cell, it's the cell membrane, that's the outer rim of the cell. And so when you think of type 2 diabetes today, it's not a disease of, eating bananas or sugar. It's a disease of the cell is too stiff and rigid. So
it's not functioning.
It's not functioning. So in your body, when you eat food, your glucose goes up, and then insulin tries to open up the cell to feed the cell. It has a hard time doing that, hence type 2 diabetes or extreme, weight gain and all that stuff. So when you can make that cell soft and permeable, the first step is getting omega-3 fats, like we talk about cod liver oil or flax or both. But then how do you make that cell, let's just say it's already really rigid. How do you make it even? Well, there comes the greens, and the greens help clean the outer rim of the cell. Number two, the greens are the car engine's fuel. That's the mitochondria. That's our energy. So there's two things that really happen when you add greens to people's diet. The cell gets softer because it's cleaning it. And then the inside of the cell, you're creating the right fuel, and that's the mitochondria. So lots of great stuff. And then greens are very, not only detoxifying, they're very alkalizing. So now I'm preserving my minerals because my body's not too acidic, and all the stuff that comes with it. So that's where we've seen.
So here's a key takeaway. Again, aha moment, connecting some of the dots. Acid equals inflammation.
Acid equals inflammation.
Greens equal alkalinity. You start to eat greens, you reduce acidity, you reduce inflammation. And
correct.
Everyone wants to point like, what does something do? Well, you can't really just say these blanket statements. We can in a podcast. You can on packaging and certain. But when you look at the science of it, so if we have high levels of acid, we're going to have high levels of inflammation. So
correct.
that cell's going to be inflamed. A lot of free radicals, oxidative stress happening. So we're going to make that cell healthier. We're detoxifying it. Remember, chlorophyll is naturally detoxifying. And then the second thing is greens are very alkalizing. So we're going to make the cell, the body, more alkaline, which is going to naturally reduce that inflammation. And the third principle we teach is the source, which we've already said is the three oldest foods. So out of anything, the super greens, it is a nutrient that you're not going to see on a label, but I'd say it's a food most people are missing to help them with those three categories of energizing that cell, detoxifying the body and the cell, and then helping us thrive mentally and physically. Because think about this, if you have poor digestion, you're going to have poor mental health or function because your gut connects to your brain. And so that's why the body's so connected and such a powerful
Well, and again, you just
food.
said it, as the gut gets healthier, you start to thrive. And so how do you get people's gut to be healthier? Yeah, we could talk about eating pre, pro, and symbiotic foods, which we do, and those are a big part of that. But when you start doing this instantly, people want to know, like, how long is this going to take? It doesn't take very long, and then they're hooked.
Well, again, out of anything, so you take and eat an apple or eat a carrot, not much is going to happen that day, that hour. When we do a presentation, we make it very clear because we do the sampling of the Spirulina Chlorella tablets, which we put in these little cups. You got to open it, you got to kind of set it up and stage it, and we very particularly only put 10 tablets or less into a cup because it is very detoxifying.
Yeah, now, like, well, we just got back from Miami. I was at Miami Beach doing an event. It was really awesome. But, we only put 3 in a cup now because people get crazy. They're like, how many? I said, let's just start slowly. Nothing's going to happen.
But so we say 10. So let's just say 10 or less or 3. And they say, well, that's so much. And I say, well, imagine this is a powder. It's really not that much. And by the way, if you start to do 15, and I don't know, I just met you. We're in front of a group. Right. 10 or less is usually pretty tolerable.
It's
detoxifying. And so me and you both take 30 to 50 a day.
Sure.
We're used to it.
Yep.
But if somebody has high toxicity, I read this in Paul Pitchford's book. One of his things is people consume greens and they have adverse reaction like detoxification. Maybe their skin starts to break out in a rash because the body's trying to detoxify, or under the armpit or the lymph. Or maybe they're having a bowel movement more regularly, or it kind of comes on quickly. And what he talks about is most people stop. What you actually want to do is you want to charge forward, help the body fully detoxify so that you actually can start to rebuild.
Yeah, so when we get these emails or calls or texts or whatever, I'm going, hey, it's working.
Yeah, it's working.
It's working. Now it's, and they're like, oh, I never thought about that. Yeah. I mean, when I first started taking Spirulina Chlorella, my thymus kind of broke out a little bit, and I started getting little rashes, and I'm like, what is this? And then you just rifle through it, and then boom, the next thing you know, your body's cleansing.
And not to scare everyone, most people aren't going to have
correct
those types of things, but it's an example of the power of these nutrients to help the body detoxify. Let's go one step further to kind of connect the dots. What makes it detoxifying? Well, this is, to me, one of the most fascinating things. Specifically, spirulina is actually more of a cyanobacteria. It's very similar to an algae. People connect them. If you're a true scientist, you're probably listening to this thinking, spirulina isn't an algae. No, it's a cyanobacteria very similar to an algae. The Spirulina Chlorella tablets we talk about is a combination of 50-50. So spirulina is not going to be as detoxifying, but it's super high in protein, very similar to chlorella.
Nucleic acid, builder.
Yep. But the chlorella, here's kind of, to me, that always stood out. The chlorella has a cell wall, super hard. You actually have to break the cell wall to consume it. Most chlorella that you see marketed towards humans are broken cell wall. They have to be consumed. But it's that fiber, it's that cell wall that binds to these toxins. Specifically, one of them that's pretty powerful are heavy metals. So we hear about heavy metals. You don't want lead and different heavy metals, and you don't. Lead's not a good thing. But we're going to have heavy metals. Like, it's in our food. For example, avocados just have lead. You need to detoxify. And so that fiber, that cell membrane in the chlorella, that's what binds to these elements and help through digestion eliminate. So when you think, well, how does it work? Well, that's why there's so much research on algae. It's the oldest food on the planet. It's been around the longest.
Oldest. That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the tiniest. So you think about the structure of algae, it's super tiny, and this is how it works inside the body. And the other thing is, when you consume chlorella, for example, it really helps to be a prebiotic in that gut to help to kill bad bacteria, but also help to thrive.
In symbiotic, so it's a little bit of both.
A little bit of both. So let's talk about
Stop for just a second. So the heavy metals is always fascinating to me, because now, horse trainers are now feeding the horses, the algae to cleanse the heavy metals. So, like you just said, we're gonna get it. So what are we doing to help cleanse it? I think that's a big point, that it's really a powerful detoxifier, and that's why you acclimate slowly. But that, to me, when I look at it, a couple things is, it's a builder, but it's also a way to help my body stay clean.
Yeah, so spirulina, I like to think about spirulina as energizing. If we're going to call it one word, spirulina is very energizing. So high in protein, helps to boost nucleic acid, has antioxidants and some other things. And then the chlorella is going to be more of a detoxifying. And then we talk about wheatgrass. We'll talk about wheatgrass in a second. But just greens in general are going to have chlorophyll because it's green. That chlorophyll is going to be very detoxifying. We know that there's also vitamins and minerals. It's going to help to
Energy in a bottle. So here comes your energy.
Here comes the energy, and it's the plant's immune system going to help us with our immune system. So let's talk about the two superfoods in the green category, the super greens that we talk about. And right before we do that, let's go one step further. So you hear people say, I need to consume dairy to get calcium, or I need to consume this nutrient because I'm deficient. I heard you say this once, and I kind of stood with me, is that we don't consume animal products like dairy to get our calcium. The cows need to eat greens to get the calcium, and if we eat greens, we can get calcium. So that's one of the missing things that people don't realize is the most efficient way to get calcium is greens.
Well, it's interesting, way back in the day I was reading about how you raise chickens, and when you give the chickens the right nutrients to eat, they're eating the seeds and all the stuff they're supposed to be eating ideally, then the yolks of the chicken are much more vibrant, more nutrient value, but the egg shell becomes super hard, which is the calcium. So it hit me like, wow, the chicken farmers know how to make the shells. And now if you're going to have a healthy egg, is it hard to break? If it's hard to break, then it's going to be a healthier. So it's no different in human beings. Like, what's the thing that makes the shell hard for us, which is our bones? It's greens. So when we eat the highest, and again, it's not about the calcium by itself, it's the absorption of the calcium. So the highest absorption of any greens for calcium is bok choy. And then you got spinach, kale. It's not dairy. It's not yogurt. It's greens.
Yeah.
So if I can get people to understand that you're going to have the highest absorption of calcium is going to be our greens, then they're not so worried about taking a calcium supplement.
And you've heard us this year talk about the dance. So if you're high inflammation because you're too acidic, you're not going to absorb and break down calcium. Well, if you move the body more alkaline, you're going to start to absorb that calcium.
And you're going to preserve it. You're not using these buffering minerals.
And then you're going to start eating foods that are going to have this more absorbable calcium. So everyone wants to know, like, what do I need to do? Well, it is kind of like step one, but it's really like this dance. If I move you over here on this side a little bit, the body starts to work more efficiently. If I keep you over here and I just keep adding these synthetic nutrients, so I never would want anyone to take a calcium supplement, but imagine if you're taking a magnesium supplement, a calcium supplement, multivitamin, you got your prescription medications, you're barely eating food with any color. This body is going to get so rigid and closed down.
And again, it makes so much sense. If I'm trying to have better bone health, I just need to eat foods that are going to be easily absorbed in high levels of calcium, such as our greens. And that's what we're not doing. The other thing too, sometimes I get a little bit like, okay, I can't eat vitamin K because I'm on a blood thinner. I understand, anticoagulants and on and on and on, but if you can get the dosage slowly allowing your body, it's actually going to be a better result. Even if anybody's out there on a blood thinner, you can bring in some greens slowly, because if you take those greens out, you're missing all the other components.
But I think it's almost the same thing when somebody says, okay, I took 3 Spirulina Chlorella and I had some type of reaction. Well, I'm telling you, that's a wake-up call that you had a crazy amount of toxicity. If you're so sensitive to the prescriptions you're taking, you probably didn't have any greens at all in your diet up until that point.
No, there's a reason you're on those prescriptions, because you didn't have this way back. Again, step one, what nutrients am I missing?
So yeah, that's a good point. Calcium is one of those things that I hear. I mean, my kids are going to school. They get this wristband that dairy is cool. And I'm not saying I'm against dairy, but they're touting it as the reason that, or the only way you get calcium. It's the opposite. The cows only get calcium.
And too much of that dairy can make your body more acidic, which you flush the minerals out from buffering minerals. So
let's talk about these super greens that we, obviously highly believe many people are missing. The two categories, we're going to talk about algae and grass. Just remember, sea vegetables are another of those 3 oldest foods.
And if you look at cancer right now, everywhere you look, they're all talking about greens. cleanses, detoxifies, alkalizes, builds. Again, this is no matter whether you're cancer or no cancer, the goal is to understand the huge power in some of these greens.
Well, I mean, so the chlorophyll is the plant's blood, which looks very similar to our blood when you break it down molecularly, and it helps to reproduce red blood cells, which is a good thing for blood flow and repairing the body. So let's talk about algae. Let's talk about the different types. We believe there's 2 types humans should really try to get into their diet. The first one, like I said, is spirulina, more of a cyanobacteria, but very similar to an algae. It's blue-green, so it's got more of a bluish tint to it. Then the chlorella is going to be more green. So spirulina is number 1. Number 2 is chlorella, and chlorella gets its name from the high amounts of chlorophyll. So chlorella is the highest food source of chlorophyll in the world. That's where it gets its name. Spirulina, the structure of it is a spiral. Spirulina, it's a blue. We like to combine them into a tablet, a 50-50 tablet, because we like the properties of both in the diversification. I think one of the takeaways is the more diversification you have in greens, you're going to see it covers a lot of ground, and the body needs diversification. You're habitual, but you still have a lot of diversification in your food.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I see a lot of young adults trying to eat healthy with very little diversification.
Right, they're missing nutrients.
So they may feel like they're lean and fit, but the body's not quite having that dance because of the diversification.
Yeah, it's not thriving like it could.
So you got spirulina, chlorella. These are 2 algae. And let's talk about all these powders on the market. You got Bloom greens, which helping with bloating and digestion. And you got AG1, and you got the new one, IM8, and different green powders. When you break down algae just in the base form, it doesn't taste good. So the takeaway from an algae standpoint, it doesn't taste very good. That's why it's not talked about at the dinner table. You can't really cook with it like other foods. And so to make it taste good, let's just say you can stir it in water, the powder in water, it's going to require some modifications, some proprietary flavorings, some types of ways to get it to mix with water. And that's why we're not a fan of these messy powders, is because if I took pure spirulina chlorella and put it in water, which I've demonstrated, it doesn't taste good. Think about your fish tank. It will taste like fish food. Mm-hmm. And that is what...
We've chewed it before, but it's not intentionally.
And it's not horrible
it's not
chewed,
terrible.
But mixed with water is not something you would complete.
No, you would not like that.
So the takeaway, you're thinking, well, I do AG1, or I've heard of AG1, or these different powders. If your powder tastes like kiwi strawberry or has no taste, they've done something to it, and that's one of the things you want to stay away from. Number 2 is if you can dry it into a tablet, it's going to be much easier to consume throughout the day. So you need to take a scoop of it and put it in a smoothie or water, mix it up. So we've created a little bit more sustainability in that habit. So it's pressurized with pressure, dried into a tablet, and then you swallow those tablets with water. But I think one of the keys is understanding the more you process these greens into a powder, into a supplement, you're losing some of the benefits. And that's why we like to keep it with spirulina chlorella as the 2 algae most people are missing.
And the other thing, too, which you talk a lot about, is where do you source it from? Where do you get it? So that's a big difference that nobody talks about. We tell you exactly where we get it.
Well, a lot of people are talking about right now with the tariffs. So most of the spirulina chlorella comes from China, and unregulated, uncontrolled, not third-party tested.
Right.
And the key, the benefit of an algae is the detoxification because it binds. If you grow spirulina chlorella in an uncontrolled environment, or environment that has potentially these toxins, let's just say bad water, bad regulations, pollution,
or no regulations,
it absorbs to it. So one of the things we've stood pretty hard on is we like to get our spirulina chlorella from Taiwan. Taiwan has much higher standards, spring water fed.
They've been doing it the longest.
But it's a lot more expensive, a lot more regulations.
Right.
And so one of the takeaways from that piece is again, you got to make sure you know where these are coming from.
It's the quality, back to the vetting of it.
And back to AG1 or these green powders, I went to these trade shows. I did a little experiment. I asked them, where do your greens come from? Most people have no idea. Even the biggest companies in the world, valued at $1 billion, they're trying to just find this commodity as cheap as possible. Mm-hmm. And again, back to us, is it exponentially different nutritionally? Probably not. What the difference is that quality, that sourcing, and potentially...
and we spend a lot of time and energy on that, and that's really a big part of our integrity, is to make sure we're bringing the highest quality. And it's not always going to be the cheapest, as you mentioned, but it's not expensive. And, I was talking to the group this week when I was in Miami, but, they kept coming out. Now, am I supposed to chew this? I said on stage, don't chew it. You chew it once, you won't chew it again. You can chew it. The grandkids chew it, but we don't recommend it. The only time I ever chew is when I'm starting to take it and I don't have any water to wash it down with. So you can chew it, but
you're about
we don't
to choke because you threw it back and you didn't have enough water. So a couple things with the Spirulina Chlorella. It's going to have different vitamins and minerals. It's got B12. It's got different antioxidants. And again, we don't like to focus on those nutrients. Just understand when you go to the source,
covers lots of
ground. But the one element that I don't think's talked about a lot, even with some of these green powders, is chlorella growth factor. So that's the concentrated form of chlorella inside chlorella, and that's how when you produce chlorella, it reproduces so fast. It's the chlorella growth factor that has that exponential rejuvenation. One of the keys with chlorella growth factor is it has nucleic acid, it has peptides, and it's super dense. And so one of our other products is 45% spirulina, 45% chlorella with 10% growth factor. So they've extracted the growth factor. This to me is kind of our black labeled product, maybe a superior nutrient dense product, really good for boosting the immune system, athletes, people that are breaking their body down, cancer, people that are going through cancer because of that nucleic acid and the peptides that help build the body. But I make a point there is when you look at food, it contains some of these nutrients that we're getting so fixated on, like glucagon or GLP-1 or these peptides that you're taking in your smoothie. The oldest foods on the planet already contain these.
They already
things.
have them. Yes.
So that's the other algae product that we promote.
I know that some people are asking me, what about this? I go, wait, there it is. It's called nucleic acid. So that's a good point.
So it helps, it helps with the RNA and DNA and helps those cells rejuvenate. So algae to me is the super green. It's very inexpensive, super nutrient dense.
And as you know, this is the one we always try to get people to start with because it's easy and it's not expensive.
Yeah, tomorrow you could start this. You open the bag, you take 10 tablets, and away you go.
Yeah, and then you slowly acclimate up to it, and then ideally for most adults, you're taking 20 to 30. I mean, when sometimes I'm on the road, I'm not taking wheatgrass. I'm taking 50 to 100 of those babies.
Yeah, so we're going to get to wheatgrass in a second. I'll make one last point. If you could consume Spirulina Chlorella in its raw form, so when you grow it think about this film. You take the film out. You have to dry the film. They call it the cake. That would be the best. It doesn't last long. It doesn't taste very good. And so our opinion is we try to get as close to the source as possible in something you can sustain. You can't sustain eating the cake unless you're producing your own Spirulina Chlorella. So we believe the powder is the best, but we like to dry it into a tablet. To
go back in time just for a second. How long has Spirulina Chlorella or this algae been on the
billions of years?
And how long as human beings have we been taking it?
I mean, it's one of the most studied foods. It's just not the most studied supplement. So here's some. I gave you that.
In the United States.
Yeah, sure. Different societies been doing it forever. So we come to the Western world and we kind of, you can't really grow.
But way back in the day, it was only given to the
kings and the queens.
Kings and the queens. And then you got to ask, why did the kings and queens get it? Because it was very expensive to produce, back then because of the cake and all the stuff you're talking about.
Yeah, and the U.S. doesn't really have the climate to produce Spirulina Chlorella. So Hawaii does a little bit of it, but the leader in the world, just like fish oil, the leader in the world has been Norway, has been the Asian communities. Taiwan is one of the front runners and has been doing it the longest. But it's been around forever.
In the Japanese warriors way back in the day, that was their survival food. That was their rations. And you're like, it's the only food that you can live on for maybe over a year, because it does have, EPA, DHA.
It's got protein.
It's got protein.
Sugar.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's got all those, not only those omega-3, omega-6 fats, but it's also got the nucleic acid, the protein. So that's why it's a survival food. So you got to ask the question, so why is it a survival
NASA took
food?
spirulina to space. They've studied it. So it's one of the most studied foods. I gave you this book, and I think it's a fascinating book. The book is about greens, so like algae. I forget what the title is, something like pond scum or something. Oil, gasoline, is algae that has been in the earth for millions of years that then produces it.
I know, it's fascinating.
So algae is the source of life.
Gasoline.
Gasoline. Now, I'm not saying that gasoline's something a superfood, but my point is it's a very powerful food. It's a very studied food. The challenge is from a food system, you're not going to just eat this. This is something that's filling the gaps. So I'll make that point. Mm-hmm. We're not promoting this as supplementing your protein.
No.
Or filling in all
just
your
filling
foods.
some gaps in.
It's filling in those gaps. It's very inexpensive. So let's go to one of our favorite superfoods, which is frozen wheatgrass juice. And I would say Spirulina Chlorella is unbelievable. Frozen wheatgrass juice is, to me, one of the superfoods that I feel is the most powerful that we have. The reason
they're different. They're both beneficial. They're just different.
Yeah, they're different. I think of algae as detoxifying and building. I look at wheatgrass as really giving us these minerals that we're gonna all have gaps on. Over 90 minerals in the wheatgrass. But let's talk about the frozen wheatgrass juice. And the first key is it's frozen wheatgrass juice. So it's not the powder. It's not the pill. And the reason why you can do frozen wheatgrass juice and you can't really do frozen algae juice is the taste. And number one, the algae doesn't really create that juice like a grass does. So this is a much more live food. That's why it's frozen. It's unpasteurized, outdoor grown. And one of the keys that we discovered early on is wheatgrass has been promoted forever. It's a superfood. But most of the time when you go to a juice bar, it's going to be grown in a hydroponic environment.
A little flat.
Which doesn't have the vitamins and minerals in the soil. It's not going to have the chlorophyll activity from the sunlight over the period of time. And so it takes about 7 days to grow hydroponic grown wheatgrass. It takes about 6 months to grow outdoor.
I think what
grown.
you just said too is the time factor. It takes time for these minerals and everything else. So you can buy chlorophyll, or you can buy the flats 7 to 10 days, but it doesn't have the time to get all those.
Well, my father-in-law
minerals.
was telling me about trees, and it's a side story, but I didn't realize this. When you think about hard trees versus soft trees, so why are pine wood cheaper? Because it grows quickly. The hardwoods grow slowly. So when you think about food, in the case of wheatgrass, what do you think is going to be healthier for you? A 7-day grown food or a 6-month grown food outside with soil? Now, the challenge is it's not easy. So we look around here in Michigan, tons of wheat farms. But most of those are going to be used for grain, so wheat, grain, which are then going to be converted into flour, some type of derivative down the road.
Right.
Wheatgrass juice, you have a very short window, about 14 days. So the grass grows. It's grown right now. We're in April. By May, they're going to cut that grass. But if you waited till June, that grass is no longer cuttable for wheatgrass juice. So the grass grows, like your grass in your yard. A blade of grass grows. You have to cut that grass while it's green. Once it starts to turn yellow and brown and it starts to joint and turn into a grain, it's not what we're talking about today. So one of the myths is that wheatgrass has gluten. Gluten doesn't show up to the party until it turns into a grain. So we're talking about a very short window, a very long process. You have to cut the grass, you have to juice the grass, you got to freeze the grass within less than
and that's why you again educated me. I was like, hello, but if you waited, the grass is going to slowly. We do this in our yards. So in the month of August in Michigan, the grass is starting to turn a little more yellow and brown. Doesn't grow as fast. But in the springtime, you cut it, and 2 days later, you got to cut it again. It's bright green. That's when they harvest it.
Again, back to that chlorophyll. So wheatgrass is high in chlorophyll. It's got the greens. You can't consume the fiber of grass. Only cows, I believe, can consume grass. So the properties are in the juice. And to me, it's one of the most amazing foods because if you grow it unpasteurized, it's a probiotic, prebiotic, symbiotic. It's a live food. Well, it's illegal to buy unpasteurized juice in the store. And so we found this farm up in Canada. They've been doing it since the 70s. And when you ship unpasteurized right to the door, that's how you get away with buying unpasteurized juice. So it's not just any wheatgrass. It's not just any wheatgrass juice.
And it's frozen. So we have 12 lockers in the United States today, something like that? 7 lockers. So they come to these lockers, and that's why you get it so quickly. But it comes to your house frozen.
Yeah, so it has to stay frozen to keep the properties. And what you'll find is once you start to, and I'm going quickly, but you take these cubes, and they're frozen into ice cubes. You melt them into water. If you just left it out on the counter, within minutes it's going to start to turn brown.
It starts to change in color.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what's showing you the power of it.
It's oxidizing
again,
so quickly.
The algae, we've dried it. It lasts a lot longer. It's got amazing benefits. One of the benefits of wheatgrass juice is that antioxidant, immune system, alkalizing properties that you can actually see happen right in front of you.
Right in front of you.
So that it breaks down, it oxidizes. That's showing you how powerful a food
I've
is.
left, I've had a couple ice cubes I've had in my car, and I forgot about them. And I come out to drink them, and now they're brown. It hasn't even been an hour.
Yeah.
They're already turning brown.
So think about that. Again, wheatgrass, Spirulina Chlorella, similar properties. We do have wheatgrass tablets. I'm not a huge fan of them. That's for people that's trying to get their toe in the water.
Yeah, your toe in the water, you're traveling maybe.
Wheatgrass tablets are not juiced. They're ground. They're fine ground. So it's more of a mineral supplement versus what we're talking about with the wheatgrass. This is really a immune system, autoimmune issue system, alkalizing. It's a live pre and probiotic. It's a whole different ballgame.
The other thing too, I'll tell my clients is say, I had a young guy, 27 years old, and he had all these. He hasn't had a regular bowel movement in 7 years. He's been to all the doctors, and they got him all this stuff. I said, let's just get your garden clean. So we had to start doing wheatgrass, and the next thing you know, and Spirulina Chlorella, and the cod liver oil. We're doing the big three, and next thing you know, 6 weeks go by, and he goes, "This is unbelievable. I'm having normal bowel movement in 7-8 years," and now he's completely hooked. And I always tell my clients, take the challenge. Take the challenge for 60 days of the wheatgrass, Spirulina Chlorella, and cod liver oil, and then we'll talk about your gut. And then we're doing some lemon in the water and eating some apples and some real food, oats or cacao nibs or whatever. And they come back, and then every time it's the same thing. So when I tell people all the time, if you're serious about getting your gut cleaned up, and that could lead to rheumatoid arthritis, that could lead to neuropathy, you name it, it's all going to get better. So it's not just isolating one thing like acid reflux or colitis or whatever. It's kind of doing the whole thing. So anyway, that's the power of, and the wheatgrass is so. Yeah, and as you know too, a lot of people think, what's it taste like? It tastes like fresh grass. Actually, in about a week, you're going to kind of crave the taste of it. So yeah. It is a live food. It's fresh, and it has that fresh taste. And when people start going down that path, they're kind of hooked. Now it's a pain in the butt to get it out of the container sometimes. We'll get that.
Yeah.
So you can talk about that. But
so here's a couple key takeaways. It's got over 90 minerals.
90
minerals. It's a live food, so that's why it's frozen. It's unpasteurized. They haven't killed the pre and probiotics. Amazing for gut health, immune system, alkalizing. But I think one of the better stories, and we don't tell this a lot, again, back to that farm, the stem, Derek and the family. His dad's, his mom was diagnosed with cancer, and so his dad read about wheatgrass. So they started growing wheatgrass and cleaned up her diet and gave her the wheatgrass and helped her survive cancer. And so that was in the 70s. And so he started growing it. And in the 70s, he had his own, wheat berry. So he started growing it. And then each harvest, he would also harvest the seed. And so the USDA organic wheat didn't come around, I don't think, till the 80s or 90s. And so they've been harvesting their own seeds since the 70s. And it's a closed loop process. So they take their own seeds, they plant them, they cut the grass, they juice the grass, they freeze the grass, out it goes. But in that process, they also harvest the seeds, and then they store them in these little bunkers, and so they can hold on to the seeds. So they call it beyond organic because you can't even buy these seeds today because now USD organic wheatgrass seeds would be controlled by the government.
It's kind of genius, wasn't it?
It's kind of genius, but you think about glyphosate and all these different chemicals that are sprayed on the grains and the genetically modified stuff. This is way before that.
Right.
And it's a beautiful harmony. And the only challenge is Mother Nature sometimes doesn't cooperate. And sometimes there's variation in the soil and the environment, and the taste kind of can flow. You always remind people of that. I've heard you say that many times, but it's nature. It's not always the same. Yeah, I mean, I had an orange this weekend. It was fantastic. Opened from the same bag. I couldn't even eat it.
Yeah, so it's just different.
But that's the power of it. So, you've heard me say this 7 times already in the podcast. AG1 costs $3.50, somewhere around that. And there's different powders out there. They're all competing for this 72 ingredients or 85 ingredients, proprietary. Frozen wheatgrass juice from the Stem Family Farm blows these things out of the water. It's a live food. It's nothing added to it. There's not 72 ingredients. There's one ingredient.
Right.
It's a probiotic, prebiotic, over 90 minerals. It's going to oxidize really quickly. But the beautiful part is they figured out this closed loop where they can grow the grass, cut the grass, freeze the grass, ship it to you. You take the ice cubes, 2 to 3, maybe 4, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. You melt them in water, and away you go. That's what we're trying to educate on, and that will cost you $2.50 for a superior, not even superior, kick this thing down the road, superior to these green powders.
Yeah, and for me, we've been doing this forever. I remember some of my friends are like, wheatgrass, and then they start doing it, and they're like, wow, that's amazing. And I've been talking to them about it for a long time. But, you start out slowly, a couple cubes, work your way up. I take 6 a day. Your mother takes 4 a day. Sometimes I'll have some at night to kind of I don't feel like eating, but I kind of like the taste of them, so I suck on them like an ice cube. So amazingly powerful.
You're kind of weird, so that's okay. But you like to suck on them. I like to suck on them.
And it's great for your hair. So it's a good thing for your skin, hair, nails on top of your gut health.
Yeah, again, one of the things, it's probably not the most studied part of it, but it is supposedly supposed to retard gray hairs, and you don't have very many gray hairs, so I guess
your mom points them out. I have more of them than you.
Well,
you're
getting.
But again, I look at my father. He was, he had gray hair when he's 35.
Gray,
so.
Yeah. So again, we wanted to talk about super greens. We wanted to talk about the 3 old. This is takeaway. 3 oldest foods on the planet are algae, grass, and sea vegetables. It feeds every animal on the planet, including humans. And so when we go close to the source, and that's one of our principles, closer to the source, you get a lot more bang for your buck. And the gaps that we have from not eating greens is quite large. And so when you can think about, I got to eat more spinach and lettuce and salad, and bok choy has calcium. And again, maybe you're not ready for bok choy, but we like to talk about these super greens, Spirulina Chlorella tablets, frozen wheatgrass juice. These are 2 simple superfoods that fill a lot of those gaps. Any other takeaways as we wrap this up on the greens?
I think the easiest, put the toe in the water for many people, they start out with Spirulina Chlorella.
Yeah.
And we recommend that, do the cod liver oil. That's a big step. Wheatgrass is a little bit more expensive, a little bit more involved, but once people go into that wheatgrass, I think most people don't ever leave that because they realize, wow, that's the benefit, and that's the minerals. So it's a process. Everybody's on a journey, but that's how you begin the journey. But you start out with maybe the Spirulina Chlorella, and then you move.
So let's talk about specifics as we wrap this up. If you're struggling with gut issues, if you feel like you have deficiencies in minerals, not eating perfect food, I would say the first thing you want to get in your diet is some type of green. So the greens are going to help clean up that gunk.
Yep.
It's going to help improve digestion. If you're taking a pre and probiotic, before you ever take a pre and probiotic, you should be doing a green.
You don't have to do it.
You don't have to do it, but even to prove yourself right
Yeah.
or wrong, whatever.
Or digestive enzymes. Why are we doing all the digestive enzymes? That's what it is.
And then you talk about the bloating and this. Start with greens. The greens are going to be, to me, the secret weapon for that gut health. It's going to help you detoxify. And again, I think the biggest takeaway is we're trying to energize the body. At the same time, we also can detoxify the body. We all need to detoxify daily.
Yep.
Don't wait for your 72-hour fast or at the end of the year.
You're
We need to
detoxifying daily.
And this is going to set us up to thriving. You have good gut health, you got good brain health. You got good brain health, you're going to have good gut health. And what you eat is really what leads to that synergy inside the body.
And I think the other thing too, to everybody know, like, people have questions about this. Abby's incredible. You can reach out to you or me. We're happy to answer some of these questions because people get them all the time. I'm like, I wish I would have reached out earlier. Like, reach out anytime. We're happy to help you.
Yeah, so these are very simple. And the takeaway that we just said is they've been around for billions of years. And so let's make things a little simpler. Doesn't mean it's easy. Spirulina Chlorella, frozen wheatgrass juice. It's not necessarily easy to find and do, but it's simple. It's been around for billions of years. And to me, this is one of the secret.
One last thing before we sign off. So you have a nice video on the website of showing you how to take the wheatgrass out of the container.
That's important.
Because many people go, I'm cutting it one cube is a half ounce. So if you're going to do an ounce or two, you're taking 2 or 4 a day. But what we do is we wrestle with it. You cut off the end, and then you put it in a container. If you don't do that, it's a pain in the butt.
And you won't do it again.
And you won't probably do it again. So we need to make this so simple is how do you break it apart? Watch the video.
But also, I don't have any other way to say it. It is a pain in the butt.
It's just
it can be easier.
It's a little effort.
It requires a little bit of effort. It's frozen. You got to get it. And I've been explaining it to people. But the effort is worth the results.
Absolutely.
So if we made it super easy, you may think it's subtle, but you'd lose some of the exponential benefit. And that's why we're trying to explain it on a podcast today. The frozen wheatgrass is live food. And the only way to make it a live food is if you freeze it. And when you freeze it, it has to now be in a packaging.
It's a vacuum seal.
That's a little bit harder to open than a
Right.
tear off.
Right.
So the benefit outweigh the struggle, but we do have a better way to do it, a better way to wrestle
and
with
that's watch the video. So we have.
So I guess the takeaway is wrestle for these super greens.
Yeah, it's worth it.
It's worth the benefit. We'll see you again next time.